Well, I want to provide another installment, I guess, in what could be called What God Has Taught Me, or God Has Taught Me, another lesson series. As most of you all know, there's been a lot of things going on in our country over the last couple of months that have not been good. A young African-American man was shot while jogging, I believe, in Georgia. Just a little over a week ago, or maybe not even a week ago, Mr. Floyd died while in police custody in Minneapolis, and there's been a lot of riots as a result of that. Even here in Indianapolis, we've had some protesters which have turned violent. There have been several people shot, and I think at least one person, if not two people, have been killed. We are under a countywide curfew because the mayor is concerned about some more violence. And as I've thought about these things, I thought about them from the perspective of what could we as a congregation, as a church of God's people, do? What could we do? How could we help? And I batted around a few ideas, and I've asked some people a few questions about how we could help and what could we do, and we're working on some things, and I'm not sure what all exactly is going to come to fruition, but there's a lot of sense of helplessness on my part. We've been doing some good things. We've been helping feed some of the hungry in this area, and that's good, and I'm glad we're involved in that. And we need to be involved in that because, again, in Matthew 25, that's one of the things that Jesus said his children should be doing, is feeding the hungry and helping the poor. And we've been doing that. But I think we can do more. And so that's been rattling around in my head for a few weeks about what we could do. And then there's some other things that have been going on in my life. One of them I will share with you that's germane to this story is Wednesday. I emailed Debbie Colburn and asked her if she and the family could make one of those "Hello, we miss you, looking forward to seeing you again" videos. It turns out to be the one that you saw at the end of our service this morning. But I emailed her this on Wednesday, and she replied back that they were driving back from Arizona and would not be back home till late Thursday night, and could she get it Thursday night or Friday morning, would that be fine? And I responded, and I said, yes, that Thursday afternoon or Friday would be perfectly fine. And then I started the next sentence of my email with the words, "Over 55 years ago, we used to live in Arizona." And for whatever reason, those words just stopped me in my tracks. I couldn't even finish the sentence. It dawned on me that I could honestly say, over 55 years ago, I used to do something. And I can remember clearly thinking when I was younger, much younger, that people who were 30 were old. And now I'm able to say, over 55 years ago, I remember. And then to make it somewhat even worse, and it's not that I've forgotten how old I am, I know how old I am. But sometimes there are things that bring our age into sharper focus, and this was one of them. I'm 64, so I was 8 or 9 years old when we lived in Arizona. And there are things that I can remember clearly about living in Arizona. We lived on the Navajo-Hopi Indian Reservation, and I went to school with Navajo and Hopi children. We were one of the few white people in the area. We lived in one of the few brick houses. Our yard was fenced in because since we lived on the reservation, there were still wild horses that would occasionally run by the house. And it just helped me realize that I'm 64 years old, and where has the time gone? And since I've been here for the last 7 or 8 years, I've had to apologize to several of you all because I don't think I have much longer left here. I don't know how old I'm going to be when I die. If things keep going the way they are, I may live to be 90, but my mind's only probably going to last another 6 or 7 years. And so I get frustrated when things don't happen as quickly as I think they ought to happen. And I can remember one time Beth Law called me and said, I need to talk to you about the way you talk to me. And I said, what? And she essentially told me that I was a little rough on her, and looking back on it, I was, because I was frustrated that things weren't happening as fast as I want them to happen. And I've met with several people who are my age, and we have lamented the fact that it has taken us so long to learn some things. Phil and I have exchanged several emails about the definition, the understanding of the kingdom of heaven. I thought I knew what the kingdom of heaven was. And I'm doing an in-depth study of the book of Matthew, and I realized I really didn't know what the kingdom of heaven was, and I'm still not sure I understand very clearly what the kingdom of heaven is. I have a much better idea now, but I sometimes lament the fact that it has taken me over 60 years to come to some understanding of basic Christianity. And so that was going around in my head, and the fact, that I'm 64 years old, and I get frustrated that things aren't happening as quick as I would like for them to happen. The situation with Mr. Floyd and here in town and other places, for the most part, for whatever reason, a lot of people want to resolve conflict by using violence. And I've never had any experience with that. We were never taught at home to answer violence with violence. We were always taught to be nice and to turn away and to walk away, and I haven't always done that. But I've never stabbed anybody, and I've never shot anybody in anger or any other reason. But not everybody grew up like I did. Not everybody had parents who cared for them like my parents cared for me. And so I wonder, what can we do? So all of this was what was, running around my head over the last few days. And so I had texted Karen on Friday, and I'd asked her to call me. I told her it wasn't anything urgent, and so she happened to call while I was downtown. I had gone downtown to get some items at Whole Foods, because that's the only place I could find them. And I was on my way up to the Fishers area to meet with some friends, because you can actually go out to eat in Fishers as opposed to Hamilton County at the time. Marion County at the time. And so she happened to call just as I had got parked out in front of Whole Foods. And so I'm standing out there on the sidewalk in front of Whole Foods. I'm in a little bit of a hurry, and so I tell her what I'm thinking about doing, about teaching some life skills classes, in particular some classes on conflict resolution. And so I'm standing there on the sidewalk talking to her in kind of a little bit of hurry, and so she's telling me more and more about what they're doing at the school where she's the principal. And I'm standing there, and no offense, Karen, I'm sorry, don't take this personally, it's not you, it's me. But I was sitting there thinking, please just hurry up. I really don't care about all of the details. I just want to go in here to Whole Foods and get my waffles and get out and be on my way up to Fishers, and we can talk in more details later. And so at one point, I think she took a breath, and I used that as an opportunity to interrupt her. And I told her that all of that sounded absolutely horrible, because after all, I grew up just fine and didn't have any of that stuff that she was talking about. And she didn't laugh at all. And I told her, I said, that's the point at which you were supposed to laugh when I said that I grew up perfectly fine. And so she kind of laughed a little bit. But anyway, so we wrapped up the conversation. She and I are going to have some further conversations about how we as a church could help some people in this area with teaching them some life skill classes. So anyway, I go into Whole Foods, and I get my waffles, and I get in my car. And for those of y'all who don't know, I have a Mini Cooper convertible, so I get in the car, I put the top down, and I pull out on, I think it was New Jersey or anyway, headed to New York, so that I could go west or east on New York and then get to the interstate. And so when I get out on New York, and I get ready to turn left, and I'm not sure what street it was on, but it was the street that heads to the ramp so I could get on the interstate, and a car cuts me off. And for whatever reason, and I don't know if it's because I had a whole lot of things going on in my head and I really wasn't paying all that much attention, or if it's just the fact that I'm 64 years old going on 16 and act like that sometimes, but it ticked me off. It upset me that this guy cut me off. And I say guy, I don't know if it was a man or a woman, I couldn't see, but they were from Michigan. So, but anyway, so they cut me off. And they zipped in front of me and got in the lane to my right. And I've got a Mini Cooper. It's a Mini Cooper S. I'm not sure what the S stands for because all of the cars have turbocharged engines. So I don't know if it stands for super turbocharged. I don't know. All I know is it's a very quick car. And so I thought to myself, well, I will teach you a lesson. And so we're stopped at a stoplight. He's up the car in front of me to my right. So the light turns green and he takes off and the guy in front of me doesn't take off as fast as I think he ought to. And so I glanced to my right. There wasn't anybody there. And so no turn signal or anything. I just kind of moved the wheel a little bit to zip over to the right, get behind the guy so I could zip back over to the left and go around him. So when I turned the wheel to go to the right, right in front of me was a huge hole in the concrete. The street had a big hole in it between the two lanes. And as quick as my car is, it was not quick enough to avoid the concrete hole. And so I hit it, and bam, the left front tire blew out. And there goes the guy off in the car in front of me. And so there wasn't enough room on the shoulder to pull over, so I kind of limped along a little bit onto the ramp where there was wide enough space, and I pulled off, got out, and sure enough, there was a hole in the sidewall of the tire. Now, I have those run flat tires. Never had those before. First car I've owned that had those tires. I was told they could run for about 80 miles with a flat. What I wasn't told was you had to go about 35 or 40 miles an hour. And so there went my trip to Fishers, and so I limped on home in that car, doing about 30 miles an hour, and I had to go for about 1.5 miles to 2 miles on the interstate till I could get to the exit so I could go home. Well, there's not a whole lot of people who enjoy coming up behind somebody on the interstate who's going about 40 miles an hour. So I got a lot of honks, and I got a lot of one of those one-finger waves that you're familiar with out on 465. And so I eventually make it home. The mini dealer was closed on Saturday, so I had to find a tire. Not very many stores stock run flat tires. Eventually I found a tire and got everything fixed on Saturday afternoon, and so everything was fine. And one of the things that hit me after I hit that concrete and blew out my tire was, who did I think I was to try to teach a class on conflict resolution when I allowed myself to get ticked off because somebody cut me off in traffic. Now, true, I didn't take out a knife and run up there and stab the person. I didn't pull out a gun and shoot at anybody. But I still lost control of myself. And my reaction was not a Christian reaction. And again, I thought, well, who do I think I am? Who do I think I am to teach young people how to resolve conflict? When I lost my cool over getting cut off in traffic. But I think the bigger lesson that I learned from that was that what business do I have getting frustrated that things aren't moving as fast as I would like for them to move when at the age of 64 I lose my cooler over something as trivial as being cut off in traffic. There's always room to grow. There's always room to be better. And at 64, I still have a lot to grow. There are a lot of things that I need to improve on. And the good Lord used a little bit of road rage, if you will, a little bit of losing my self-control, and a big hunk of missing concrete to teach me that. I hope you have a great week. Please keep me in your prayers.